And now we're going to bring up another topic, but this time it's going to be from the hinterland. Since this morning, Kenya has been mentioned quite a few times, and that's why. So while some of the places get quite often mentioned with respect to social impact, India being one of them, and you've seen a good smattering of both Indian speakers and participants so far, but you cannot talk about social impact without actually having somebody who lives and stays right next to the place of action. So we are delighted to have the presence of Sitati Furukha. We know him as Bernard Sitati as well. Sitati Furukha is the CEO of One Africa Advisory Company. I've known Bernard for a number of years, and his experience, especially in the agricultural business in East Africa, and his knowledge of the industry, of the sector, is remarkable. He's also worked in corporate. He's also worked with small scale companies. He does a lot of work with farmers and cooperatives and societies in and across East Africa. And to tell the story, to tell more about the story, let me invite upon Sitati Furukha.
Thank you very much, Aniwan, for that beautiful introduction. I would like to, first of all, take this opportunity to congratulate you for putting this together and enabling us to at least communicate to the world on what's happening within our own industry, so to speak. I don't know whether I will belabor on what has been introduced as what I do. My background is finance, but I've been more of an operations guy from the corporate perspective as an operations manager, general manager in both coffee, macadamia, and dairy. Not forgetting beef comes along that. So when I was asked to speak about technology, I thought it's something that we are lively doing today because we've been permitted by our legislative regime in Kenya, something that was a bit difficult to embrace owing to individual interests. And I thought most probably I would want to mention a product that you're providing to the farmers. You're already engaging farmers severally for the buying, but mostly to get the county to the county. Kenya is divided into counties. We have 47 of them. We have about 31 counties that are actually growing coffee, and of those 31, we're engaging about 5 of them in actively getting them on board to embrace technology to increase production, ease in processes, and also find better markets or find better prices for yield. So as it is today, just gonna talk about how technology can be used to foster production in coffee and how that production translates into yield, yield into improved incomes, income into social impact for the communities that are engaged. As part of the introduction, I just want to say that 70 to 80% of the coffee production in Kenya is by smallholders who number between 700,000 to 800,000. So you can see how its improved production can actually add or basically have a major impact on a community. If you translate that by, let's say, 4 to 5 people per farmer. Ivan, I think this is my first time to use this, and you would be able to let me now roll with the presentation so that I can highlight on what I think should be.
Yes, so I think you can click on the screen and you'll be able to walk through.
Okay.
Yeah, just yeah.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So basically, my presentation today is titled "Use of Technology to Increase Coffee Production: A Classic Case of Coffee Value Chain," which is what I've lived for most of my working life. I've worked in the coffee industry for close to 16 years now, and I've seen what impact technology to some extent has had, but there's a better way if it's actually organized to along the entire value chain to the benefit of the farmer, and then the social impact that it will have on the communities that actually do the grain. So that's it. In agriculture, as a value chain, so to speak, each and every aspect of the value chain is influenced in a way by the goings on in the technology world. As a value chain, we have three levels. We have the production level, which in itself can be a value chain, inbound, outbound logistics. We have the processing of the product that comes off that has not been transferred from the owner to the buyer, which can also have its inbound and outbound logistics. And then we have the market, which again, by that time, it hasn't been transferred from the owner, but it's also a process within. So if you look at what technology are applicable, you can actually cut across three of them. We can say mobile technology, Internet of Things, and artificial intelligence. And if this is applied in the process of coffee production and the coffee value chain, as it's called, then it results into smart agriculture, or what you call precision agriculture. And this is basically the use of ICT and various key components, like robotics, autonomous vehicles, automated hardware, etc., just to basically be able to predict, be able to be on the farm, and be able to be informed and do basically the interventions that are requisite for that particular crop or that specific time, so that there is no delayed process. Sorry about that. Sorry, I jumped. Sorry. So this basically, smart farming basically leads to efficiency at the farm level, yeah, lowering production costs at the production level, and improved quality and quantity yield, which ultimately results into a better price because you have a good product. Smart agriculture in coffee is utterly necessary because sometimes it's deemed that the interventions that are applied are based on historical understanding of the coffee process. Yeah. In which case, if we introduce technology into coffee, then the farmers will apply the right interventions at the right time, making thus smart agriculture or precision agriculture. So as to bring us to understand the Kenyan space, I just think it's wise for you to understand the coffee value chain in Kenya, how coffee moves from the farm all the way to, moves from the farm all the way to the market. That said, normally if you look at your screen, if you're there, you see that coffee moves from the growers at the farm level. It goes through harvesting. Okay. Then from harvesting, it has to be moved from the farm to the factory for primary processing. The primary processing is basically what you call wet processing, or it's the removal of the red pulp for anyone who has ever seen coffee before. Then after that, the coffee is dried, stored into the stores at the cooperative level. Remember, we are talking about a bigger percentage of smallholder farmers whose ability and capacity cannot enable them to do this on their own. We're talking about smallholders who own between 1 or half an acre of land under coffee to 5 acres or 3 acres, so to speak. And as such, this calls for Antoine, you'll excuse me. This seems like my first time to use this. I seem to. So it will be very uneconomical for them to invest into primary processing because it involves quite some complex equipment, expensive equipment for them, given the returns per unit. So we prefer that they actually take the coffee to the cooperative. At the cooperative level, there's what you call aggregation. After aggregation, it's graded according to the weight before it's processed. So there's a lot of process that goes on that a farmer at the farm level can actually not engage in because it will be very uneconomical. So after it's pulped, the milling agent takes over, then it's milled. After milling, the coffee is then taken to the warehouse. Then the marketing agent comes into play where he picks the coffee. The marketing agent is basically the one now who takes the coffee either to the auction or gets an overseas buyer and sells the coffee directly to the overseas buyer. Then if it's at the auction, the samples are taken because coffee is normally sold on a sample basis. The samples are taken, and if the person who's buying the coffee likes the sample, then he makes the order for the bulk of the coffee after paying the price that is agreed upon with the marketing agent who is acting on behalf of the farmer. So you can see from growing all the way to, from number 1 growing over here, all the way to number 18, coffee trucked to buyers. That is when the payment is made and the farmer now can actually say the property has been transferred from him to the buyer. So coffee, after that, what happens is now the buyer, the coffee shipped out, depending on what he wants to do the coffee, whether he wants to blend it or he wants to sell it exclusively as it is, as a single source, meaning that when you talk about single source, it means it's coffee that is specific from one farm or specific from a certain area. It's not mixed with any other coffee. It's what you call specialty coffee. So that said, so far, I want to jump on to the next one, which is what are the challenges that most probably I didn't say coffee value chain challenges that can actually be resolved by technology and by extension have an impact on the farmer's production and financial position due to improved incomes by the intervention. So when we speak to the farmers, as late as about 3 weeks ago, you find that they still want to engage in what they know, sitting back and waiting for an agronomist, for example. So they have, there's no information that is consolidated in a place where they can actually just go in and adopt new production methods. And as such, that continues to see farmers producing anywhere between 2 to 3 kilos per tree in Kenya, when the potential of each and every last one of their trees is actually 20 to 30 kilos per year. So that is absolutely necessary. So So the other problem that you have in the coffee sector is actually escalating cost of production. Then there's an increase in the cost of servicing. That's basically seen from the value chain. There are a lot of interventions. There is a lot of agency, milling agents, marketing agents before the coffee gets to the market. Those are all costs that accrue to the farmer. But then how does the farmer then influence this or make sure that he cuts out the brokerage fees for the agency? That I think technology will go a long way in resolving that when it comes down to that. So there's also market information asymmetry and insufficient information across the value chain. So the interventions, as I had said earlier, both at the farm level, the aggregating units, smallholder farmers, is disintegrated. So depending on how any player along the value chain wants to benefit, it can cause misinformation or disinformation to his advantage, and the farmer has no proof. He has no reference, or he doesn't have a Bible that he can go back to and say what was said was actually true. So the need to demystify the markets for the farmer, for the cooperative, is utterly necessary, and that can actually be mitigated through the use of technology if applied right. So that the farmer can then say, no, don't take my coffee to the market today, for example, because I know the market's not going to, in a month's time, if you hold off the coffee and you don't process, I'll be able to earn better. That is where we are. Okay, so what are the remedies that technology can actually provide for the coffee farmer? One is record keeping, and societies seem to do this physically by writing down names. They have a register that they open up on, or if anything, they've only digitized to some extent, and they keep codes in Excel or something, or they have a small software that has been given to them by a service provider. But with a wholesale unit that has an end-to-end, that is production to market, then registration of farmers and geotagging of farmers actually goes a long way in traceability, something that we will also discuss. So weather prediction, that means the farmers can actually intervene. Farmers can actually intervene at the right time for the right, given the fact that they have the information. For example, if a dry spell is coming in the next few days, the farmer can decide to mulch, or just to cover the moisture that is already available and make sure that the crop continues to run. The soil health checks through the use of AI. You're able to tell the deficiency or abundance of certain nutrients that are required by the crop. Then variable rate technology in coffee farming, that is a remedy that is long overdue because it helps in applying the right intervention at the right time in the right quantities. For example, if it's fertilizer, if it's 200 grams per tree, then you apply 200 grams per tree or 50 grams, and it's specific and it's variable, and that comes in. Mobile money payment has influenced what you call financial inclusion, because now farmers are able to get money on their phones. And for those of you who know, I mean, M-Pesa has been touted as something that came up in Kenya, and Kenya has been known for that, where farmers get virtual money on their phones and they're able to utilize it, as opposed to be in the past, what used to be in the past, where farmers will have to wait, go to their circles or go line up in a bank to get their money. So that basically means they're able to meet their financial obligation on time, as and when they know that they actually owed and paid. Then market information. Market information, I mean, here we're talking about internet and system prompts. If you have a system like the one we're trying to implement in the counties, you'll be able to know where the market is headed, and no one in between the value chain, because of that opaqueness that has been propagated over time by value chain players, can hold that information away from you for you to make informed decisions towards when you're supposed to take your coffee to the market, or when are you supposed to get paid because your coffee has already sold. Yeah, so that's it. That's where we are as far as tech remedies are concerned. Sorry. So what is the overall effect on coffee as a value chain? And I broke this down to about 6 or 4. And yeah, so what we would have if we get farmers on a platform and in the system is that we'll have digitized farmer profiles, knowing the number of bushes. Bushes are basically the number of trees on the farm, geotagged farm, assuring of accountability and an end-to-end traceability. Why is traceability key? At the moment, we have certification companies or organizations that try to say that coffee is being grown in a certain way at a certain place. And that is basically on trust basis. But when you have a geotagged farm and this traceability of that coffee through the system, it gives comfort to the person who's taking the final product, that is the coffee cup, in a restaurant in the US, knowing that this coffee was grown in this specific case. He almost owns the process. The other effect on this will be the digital platform for management of farm credit, validation of transactions, and then profiling of farmers, because it's information that is given in one. You know how much that farmer is worth, how much coffee can produce in a year, and what are the, given the fluctuations, what is the minimum he can actually get out of that. That gives a lot of comfort to anyone along the value chain who's providing, let's say, finances, who's providing a service, and any other things that farm produce, farm inputs and all that. That basically helps them to be informed on how able or who to target, for example, for that particular solution. So technology also helps in planning and managing farm activities. So you can, since you're experienced, you can always put this into a system and say, it only takes this time to do this activity, so I will need so much resource for this particular activity, both human and most probably input. And yeah, it makes application of resources more efficient in terms of realizing the final crop. The other effect is the buyer-seller platform. So the prices are better discovered owing to the quality and quantity, because you know where they're coming from. You almost can tell what agronomical interventions have gone into producing that specific bean, and you're comfortable in paying for a price that a farm will also be comfortable too. Like I said, we have mobile payments. We also have bank payments. So there's no intervention or money going through an agent, then another agent, then the cooperative, then from the cooperative to the farmer. This will provide a solution to payment going directly all the way to the ultimate farmer, because he's technologically advanced in terms of mobile and access to his bank, most probably again through his mobile. With data collected and put together, policies are better made by the government with such information, and the intervention is always in view of that particular data. Now, one of the problems that we have is the youth don't feel like farming is anything fancy. So we have had a shift. In fact, when you go to the rural Kenya, you'll find that the coffee farmer is an elderly person, mostly retired and in his twilight years, while the youth have gone out to both blue and white collar jobs in town. But introduction of technology and ability to have interventions done in medicine Spain will basically have the youth come back into coffee growing. And this is a big, big problem because most of the people who have seen the youth leave the countryside or the farm to town, and they actually are putting the coffee. This leads to reduced production. So if we can apply or digitalize this, then the whole process, then it will make a lot of sense for youth to be involved because it's what trends. Yes, I think my presentation will end there. I will invite a Q&A.
Yeah, Bernard, we've got a couple of questions.
Anyone?
Yes, can you hear me? Bernard?
You're muted.
I'm not, I'm using two. Can the others hear me?
You're muted. Anyone, you're muted. I can't hear you.
You may need to put your sound up, I think. Let me ask the others. Can others hear me? If you can, then say yes in the chat.
Anyone, I can't hear you.
Yeah.
Anyone, I can't hear. I'm lost. I can't hear. Anyone?
Let me just call him. Yeah. I'm just.
Anyone?
Yes.
I can't hear anything.
Guys, for the rest of it, I'm just going to call Bernard so that he can hear me.
I can't hear him. Hello?
Hey, Bernard.
I can't hear anything. Anyone?
All of us can hear you. All of us can hear you. And others can hear me as well, except for you.
And haven't muted. I don't know what the problem is. Man. I haven't. Okay, let me just put this on.
Yeah, sorry guys for the others. Let me just get over the technology glitch here. Yeah, we are trying to create a social impact, but technology is not necessarily playing with us all the time. So let's see if Bernard can respond. Otherwise, we'll probably go to the next one. Let's give Bernard a couple of minutes.
I'm available now. I can hear you.
You can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, good, good. Okay, cool. So, yeah, so there are a couple of questions. First question is, what is the impact of climate change on coffee yield in Kenya? Going forward, does the real-time weather and soil parameter sensing critical for quality coffee production?
Yes, it is not clearly, sorry, it's not, it hasn't been documented as having an effect per se because of a couple of issues that go into production, like I've mentioned before. There are a number of things that actually affect production, and production has continually gone down. Not because there's one estates being cut down and converted into real estates. Coffee estates are being converted into real estates, so there's a reduction of land and the neglect that farmers have. Remember, in the year 1988, if we can talk about history and live in that glory, we were one of the biggest producers of coffee. I think we did about 120,000 metric tons 120,000 metric tons, 129,000 metric tons. But that has gone down to anything between 30 to 50,000 metric tons. You can see the drop. So I cannot, in my own understanding, and even the industry, we cannot tie it down specifically that climate change has had a direct effect. It has, might be, with the existing crop, but the last 4, 5 years or 10 years, we have just seen a fluctuation of 2 to 3 kilos per tree on average. So it doesn't seem to be tied to that, because again, you have people cutting off trees, you have a lot of things that are going on that are actually affecting production, that you cannot specifically say climate change is this. And then given the fact that there are smallholder farmers whose records are not clearly visible to everyone, or any policy maker or person to view that. So, but going forward, in terms of does weather prediction help? Yes. Does knowing the health of your cell help? Yes. Because then traditionally in Kenya, we've had cooperatives being the ones that procure or decide according to the coffee calendar what chemicals to apply, or what fertilizer to apply, or what foliar feeds to feed the plants. And with that in mind, you'll find that mostly, these interventions sometimes are over-applied on a farm. So when the farmer takes the input, it does not really add value because he doesn't know the health status of his whatever he's adding. If it's already acidic and he puts, let's say, NPK or whatever other fertilizer that is acidic, it just continues towards that direction. But remember that if he does not realize a higher crop or a higher yield from that particular crop, then he will have to pay back using the meager earnings that he earns off a crop that has no right intervention. So yes, that is key. I've mentioned about mulching and making sure that you take care when the dry season is coming around. And yes, knowing the weather is key.
Thanks for that, Bernard. The next one is another question. Small land holdings would mean that's not viable for individual farmers to deploy technology solutions for enhanced quality. How is Kenya dealing with this issue?
Yes, that is partly true, and that's the reason why with that you have cooperatives whose work is basically to aggregate and make sure the coffee is marketable. But again, in terms of registration of farmers, and that's why you're saying it's important, because at this point in time, you see it from an angle of it's difficult because there are many farmers. But once you have all these farms geotagged, and you have these farmers knowing the status of their crop, and you have a call center where they can call in and basically be advised on the crop health and all these things, that would go a long way. And that's the reason why the government has purposed directly to include in its current coffee rules under the Crops Act in Kenya, the need to digitalize the industry. And Anban will correct me on this because there's a difference between the two, digitize and digitalize. So it's enshrined in law that we need to have all these farmers registered so that it's easier to make policies that will enhance production or policies for interventions in the coffee sector.
Thanks, Bernard, for that. And in fact, I've got a couple of questions. Because you and I, we have interacted and worked on a couple of projects together. What I find is that in the developed market, where a lot of the investment and investors reside, there is, whenever they talk about social impact projects, there is a genuine interest, on doing stuff. And yet, when we interacted, you've been much closer to the ground, especially with the coffee growers and in general agricultural sector, the farmers, the cooperatives. Do you see there still is a gap? I mean, based on what we see here, there should be like a race for who gets there first, and yet on the ground, the situation seems to be very, very different. What's your take?
I lost you a bit. I didn't get the question directly.
Yeah, I mean, so there is a genuine interest, a lot of interested party in the Western world who wants to take on projects in emerging markets, but you on the ground, are you seeing there are a lot of projects, a lot of interested parties coming, or are you still seeing there is a gap that exists between, let's say, the end farmer versus some of these investments?
I think that the interest is there, and as you can say, the social impact is basically the change from an aspect of handouts to an aspect where people's capacities are developed to change their lives by some sort of enterprise. We are seeing a lot of NGOs shifting from handouts to basically encouraging farmers or encouraging people to ply their trade, what they know best, so that they can actually earn that money and it becomes more sustainable as opposed to a handouts that will use and so to your question, in terms of interest for people who want to intervene in Kenya, yes, there is. The factor that comes into play is the level of available information for them and the disconnect between the information at the farm level, or now for agriculture, that is, at the farm level, versus the information that the buyer has.
All right, so let's see if there are any other question or any comments in the chat for people, from people. Okay, yeah, so yeah, I think that was it. So I would like to thank you, Bernard, for taking your time and sharing your wisdom, your insights on what's happening on the ground. Sometimes, for people who are further away from what's going on, it becomes difficult to comprehend. And that's why it is important to hear it directly from people like you on what's going on. But with that, I would like to, especially from the Roundtable Insights team, like to thank you for participating and sharing your thoughts here. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's Sitati Furukha.